There is a book sitting in a library at Yale University. It has been there since 1969. It is 240 pages long, written by hand, illustrated in careful detail throughout. It is clearly organized into sections. It has a consistent writing system. The same characters, the same patterns, used with the kind of control that comes from someone who knows exactly what they are writing. Nobody can read a single word of it. Not linguists, not cryptographers, not the codebreakers who cracked Nazi communications during World War II, not modern artificial intelligence systems trained on every known human language. The book has been studied continuously for over 100 years. It has defeated every serious attempt at decipherment. This is the Voynich Manuscript. And what makes it truly strange is not the mystery itself. It is that every time someone believes they are close to an answer, the answer turns out to be wrong. Let us start with what we can actually verify. The manuscript is carbon dated to the early 15th century. The vellum, the treated animal skin it is written on, dates to between 1404 and 1438. That is not an estimate. That is a radiocarbon test conducted by the University of Arizona in 2009 with a 95% confidence interval. The ink has not been tested to the same precision, but nothing about its composition contradicts the date of the vellum. The binding is later, but that is common for manuscripts of this age that will rebound over the centuries. So we are dealing with something produced in the early 1400s, most likely somewhere in Central Europe. That is about as specific as the physical evidence gets. The manuscript is written entirely in an unknown script. It uses an alphabet of between 25 and 30 characters, none of which match any known writing system in the historical record. The characters are consistent throughout. This is not random scrawl or doodling. It is someone writing deliberately, in a system they clearly knew and controlled. The text runs left to right. There are spaces between what appear to be words. There are longer and shorter sections. There are patterns that look like grammar. Certain characters appear frequently at the start of words, others cluster at the end. It behaves, statistically, like a real language. And yet no one can read it. The man whose name the manuscript now carries, Wilfrid Voynich, acquired it in 1912. He was an antiquarian book dealer, originally from Poland, working out of London and later New York. He purchased a collection of manuscripts from the Jesuit college at the Villa Mondragone near Frascati, Italy. This book was among them. When Voynich examined what he had bought, he found a letter tucked inside. The letter was dated 1665, written in Latin, addressed to the Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher in Rome. The letter was from Johannes Marcus Marci, a Bohemian physician and natural philosopher. In it, Marci described the manuscript and asked Kircher, who was famous at the time for his work deciphering ancient scripts, whether he could make any sense of it. Marci wrote that the book had previously been owned by Emperor Rudolph II of Bohemia, who had supposedly paid 600 gold ducats for it in the late 16th century. Rudolph was known throughout Europe for collecting unusual objects, manuscripts, and curiosities. His court in Prague attracted alchemists, astronomers, and natural philosophers from across the continent. The Voynich manuscript, whatever it was, had apparently been considered worth an enormous sum. Before Rudolph, the trail goes cold entirely. Kircher apparently never replied, or if he did, his reply has not survived. The manuscript remained in Jesuit hands, archived, unstudied, unknown, for nearly 250 years, until Voynich purchased it in 1912. Voynich spent the rest of his life attempting to decode it. He never did. He died in 1930, the manuscript still unread. Before going any further, it is worth looking carefully at what the manuscript actually contains, because the writing is only part of the strangeness. The manuscript is divided into sections by its illustrations. Scholars have given these sections names based on what the images appear to show, because the text itself cannot confirm what any of it means. The largest section is botanical. It shows plants, detailed, carefully drawn plants, each labeled with text. There are roots, stems, leaves, flowers rendered with the kind of observation that suggests someone who understood botany. Except almost none of the plants can be matched to any species that exists or has ever been documented. Some appear to be composite, features of 2 or 3 different real plants combined into one illustration. Some seem entirely invented. A small number have been tentatively matched to real species by researchers, but even those identifications are disputed. Whatever these plants are, they were drawn with intent. They are not decorative. Then there is an astronomical section. It contains circular diagrams clearly organized around celestial or zodiac themes. There are stars, suns, and moons rendered in careful sequence. Some of the diagrams look plausibly like maps of the night sky. Others are harder to interpret, with radiating lines and nested circles that suggest either cosmological diagrams or something more obscure. There is a section that scholars have called balneological, a term that refers to bathing or spa treatments. It shows groups of human figures, almost all women, immersed in pools and channels connected by elaborate pipe systems. The figures appear to be interacting with one another and with the liquid around them. Some researchers have interpreted this as a medicinal diagram, something to do with humoral theory or therapeutic bathing, which was serious medicine in the 15th century. Others find the imagery harder to categorize. No consensus exists. There is a pharmaceutical section, small illustrated containers, jars, and vessels with text running alongside them. Recipes, perhaps. Remedies. Quantities and instructions, all entirely unreadable. And there are pages of dense, unillustrated text. Whatever this book is, it is not random. It has structure. It has clear sections with different visual vocabularies. Somebody made this with sustained intent and considerable skill over what must have been a significant period of time. When Voynich brought the manuscript to public attention, the attempts to decode it began immediately and have never fully stopped. In the 1920s, the first major decipherment claim emerged. William Romaine Newbold, a professor of philosophy at the University of Pennsylvania, announced that he had cracked the code. His theory was that it was a microscopic shorthand invented by the 13th century friar and philosopher Roger Bacon. Newbold's announcement made international headlines. For several years, it was taken seriously. Then other scholars went back to the manuscript and examined his evidence. They found that the patterns Newbold had identified were not in the text at all. They were artifacts of how aging ink cracks and deteriorates. He had, in effect, been reading his own interpretations into the natural decay of the material. His theory was completely dismantled. During the Second World War, some of the finest cryptanalysts in American history were given access to the manuscript. These were people who had broken genuine enemy communications under genuine operational pressure. They concluded that the text was either an extremely sophisticated cipher or not a cipher at all in any conventional sense. They could not get further than that. In the 1970s and 1980s, computer-assisted statistical analysis began. The results were genuinely interesting. The text has measurable properties consistent with natural language. The distribution of characters follows Zipf's law, a mathematical pattern found reliably in real human languages, more closely than randomly generated text would. Certain words repeat at frequencies that mirror patterns in real writing. Something in the Voynich manuscript behaves like language, but behaving like language and being language are not the same thing. The more recent attempts have, if anything, made the picture more complicated. In 2017, a researcher named Nicholas Gibbs published a theory in the Times Literary Supplement. He claimed the manuscript was a women's health manual written in abbreviated Latin. His paper was reviewed by professional linguists and medievalists. It was found to be without foundation. His proposed abbreviations did not map reliably onto actual Latin words, and his methodology was not reproducible. In 2019, a Canadian academic named Jared Cheshire published a paper arguing that the language was a previously unknown Proto-Romance language. His paper attracted significant media attention. Multiple established linguists reviewed it. Their assessments were almost universally that his methodology was flawed, his translations unsupported, and his conclusions not credible. In 2024, teams applied artificial intelligence directly to the problem. Large language models were given the full digitized manuscript and trained to identify structural patterns. Some found statistical similarities to specific language families. None produced a translation. None identified a key. The manuscript absorbed all of it and gave nothing back. There are three serious theories that remain in genuine contention among researchers. The first is that the manuscript encodes a real language, one that is either extinct or so heavily disguised through encoding that the language itself is buried beneath layers of transformation. This theory accounts for the statistical language-like properties. It explains why the text has grammar-like patterns without being readable. The weakness is that no one has found a plausible candidate language that survives partial comparison with the text. The second is that it is an elaborate cipher, not a simple letter substitution that was ruled out early, but a polyalphabetic or multi-layer system created by someone with genuine cryptographic sophistication. Such systems existed in the 15th century. Alchemists, physicians, and political operatives of that era had real reasons to encode sensitive knowledge. The problem is that no cipher key has ever emerged, and none of the many proposed cipher systems has produced a coherent output. The third theory is that it is a hoax, a deliberately constructed nonsense document designed to look like a sophisticated encoded manuscript created to sell to a wealthy and credulous buyer, Rudolph II being the obvious candidate. This theory gained significant traction in 2004 when Gordon Rugg, a researcher at Yale University, demonstrated that a simple tool called a Cardan grill, a grid-based device for generating text combinations, could produce output statistically similar to the Voynich Manuscript relatively quickly. If that is true, then the 600 gold ducats Rudolph reportedly paid may represent the most expensive confidence trick of the medieval period. But the hoax theory has serious problems of its own, creating 240 pages of internally consistent nonsense text with plausible vocabulary distributions, grammatical-looking patterns, and organized sections, while also producing detailed and consistent botanical illustrations, astronomical diagrams, and human figure compositions, is not a small or quick undertaking. It would require months of sustained, skilled work. The question of who is capable of that, and why, and whether the effort could remain completely hidden, has no satisfying answer. No theory fits all the evidence cleanly. The manuscript was donated to Yale's Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library in 1969 by Hans Kraus, a rare book dealer who had purchased it from Voynich's widow. It is cataloged simply as MS-408. High-resolution scans of every page are available on the Beinecke's website. You can look at it yourself today. Yale has held the manuscript for over 50 years. Hundreds of researchers have applied for access. Dozens of peer-reviewed papers have been published. The manuscript has been examined with ultraviolet light, multispectral imaging, X-ray fluorescence, and the full suite of modern analytical tools. It has not been decoded. What we know for certain is this: the manuscript exists. It is genuinely old. It was written with skill and intent. and it contains some form of organized information arranged with care across 240 pages. What we do not know: who wrote it, where, when exactly, for whom, and what any of it sees. There is no consensus on what it is. There is no accepted partial decipherment. There is not even agreement on whether it records something real. The Voynich Manuscript has outlasted every person who has tried to solve it. The cryptanalyst who broke the Enigma machine could not crack this. The linguists who mapped the structure of dozens of dead languages could not crack this. The computers that translate in real time between hundreds of living languages can't crack this. Whatever is written in those 240 pages has remained private for over 600 years. It may remain private for 600 more. This has been the Pale Dossier. File 03 remains open.